Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Soini Gray and this is From the South, the daily news brief from Telesur English. And we start this new edition right now. Thank you for joining us. We begin in Venezuela, where the Vice President, Tarak El-Assaimi, has announced that all sea and air links with Aruba, Curacao and Borneo will remain closed until a high-level meeting with the island's authorities take place. The Bacadera port in Aruba was empty on Monday after President Nicolas Maduro closed the country's borders with Aruba and the other islands on Friday for 72 hours. Just a few weeks ago, the port was full of copper wire and other materials that Maduro said were being smuggled from Venezuela. Our special correspondent, Madeleine Garcia, has the latest from Aruba.
Venezuela's government has decided to extend the 3-day suspension of all sea and air links and all commercial activities with Aruba, Curaçao, and Borneo, until a meeting is set up between these nations to coordinate different measures to control all smuggling activities. A spokesperson from Aruba's government said that they are aware of this problem and they are willing to cooperate with Venezuela to handle this issue. Aruba's officials have also said that they will look again at their laws, since in the island it is not forbidden to sell copper that comes from abroad, and it doesn't matter how it got to the island. Aruba is the biggest exporter of copper from the Caribbean, despite the fact that they don't produce or have this mineral. The same is happening with gold, yet another mineral that is being smuggled from Venezuela. We will keep you informed.
We thank Madeleine for that report. As part of its efforts to combat international sanctions, the government in Venezuela is preparing to launch its very own cryptocurrency known as the Petro. The pioneering move is in its final stages. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, has the latest.
Anonymous and subversive. This is what you would usually associate the world of cryptocurrency mining with. But not for much longer. Venezuela is leading the way in regulating the process by developing a legal framework for miners to work in. A new registry has been set up, with an estimated 860,000 miners signing up. We caught up with one to get an idea on why he thinks this is an important new step.
The crypto mining community is very pleased with the new cryptocurrency and the official decree, because before there were legal vacuums. Though it wasn't prohibited, there was a legal issue which allowed small security groups to persecute, extort, and take money from those who mined cryptocurrency. With the official decree, an entire legal framework is being created with a cryptocurrency observatory and superintendency. Although there are still some questions around it, it is no doubt that it's something that is going to protect us legally.
The Petro is set to be backed up by Venezuela's vast mineral reserves, with the value of each unit of currency to be covered by 1 barrel of crude oil, with other commodities such as diamonds and gold to serve as security. We spoke to financial specialist Jean-Pierre Anaya on what he thought the benefits will be.
The difference with the proposal of the Petro is that you are proposing from an important oil provider to create a currency used to the oil trading. Yeah, because now, even in OPEC, when it was an organization created to dismiss the power of the United States in the oil trading, we still use US dollars that at the end of the day are controlled by US banks. So this is the first proposal to use an important commodity as the oil is, not using the traditional banking system, but uses a new technological solution to the problem of payments.
In an attempt to bypass foreign-imposed economic sanctions, the launch of Venezuela's Petro stands alone as an imperative option for the country to move forward. Although question marks still remain on how successful it will be, Venezuela is showing the world that there is always an alternative path. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Venezuela's President, Nicolas Maduro, has met with 40,000 community doctors and delegates from the public health system in Caracas. Maduro congratulated the community health workers for their work. He also denounced a media campaign led by the United States for portraying Venezuela as facing a humanitarian crisis. The Vice President, Tarek El Assami, and the Minister of Health, Luis Lopez, also attended the meeting.
The media war against Venezuela has started once again. Every day they're publishing negative stories about the country. Last year, there were 3,800 negative stories published in news agencies that are working against Venezuela. The agencies that are leading this campaign are Reuters, AFP from France, and AF, a Spanish news agency. This is a daily campaign.
Colombia is preparing for yet another historical step in its peace talks with its largest guerrilla group, the ELN. Delegations from both sides arrived in Quito on Monday. The ceasefire between the National Liberation Army and the government of Juan Manuel Santos is due to expire this Tuesday, and social leaders and human rights activists are demanding its extension.
This will be the fifth cycle of talks in Quito. The main agreement reached prior to the talks was a change in the negotiating team on the government side. They will also review the advances in the bilateral ceasefire. This is the first agreement in 53 years of conflict, a necessary step for negotiations. Despite the achievements, including agreeing on an agenda to follow, the ELN has criticized the government for not fully complying with the deal.
The government, in an evil way, took advantage of it to begin repression against the population that works with illicit crops. In the same way, the army is using it for military leverage.
The ELN says that the verification and audit mechanism meant to protect social leaders and the population as a whole has collapsed. They say that the government has ignored many of the reported cases. The ELN says it is necessary to safeguard vulnerable populations to secure social participation, a main aspect in the upcoming deal. Colombia's former ambassador in Cuba, Gustavo Bell, is the new chief negotiator for the government of Juan Manuel Santos. Bell and his team have the task of overseeing and extending the ceasefire and reviewing the actions of security forces during this period. The ELN has denounced attacks on 2 rebel camps and assaults on ELN prisoners, which go against what was agreed upon. Despite the many setbacks, the ELN and the government have agreed to continue their talks through 2018, a sign that Colombia could be transitioning to a definitive and total peace.
And the leader of the FARC, now a political party in Colombia, Rodrigo Londoño, also called on the government and the ELN to extend the bilateral ceasefire. On Twitter, the future candidate for the presidency, who leads the Alternative Revolutionary Force of the Commons, invited both sides to continue seeking peace for Colombia, which he said was the most noble of all causes. He told them they should respond to the wishes of all Colombians who want national reconciliation. The leaders of the FARC also applauded the decision by the ELN not to walk away from the talks in Quito under any circumstances. Londoño said the will for peace is what will bring the talks to a good conclusion. And we'll be back very soon, so stay with us. Welcome back. The political crisis in Peru has also damaged the political movement founded by Alberto Fujimori, the jailed former leader who was pardoned before Christmas. Political analysts say the movement has suffered an internal split which could jeopardize his political aspirations.
Peru's Congress has often been the stage for the fight between members of the Fujimorismo movement, 2 different groups led by Keiko and Kenji Fujimori.
It's time for Kenji to grow up. and to look for his own political path.
My parliamentary group wants to remove me.
The movement's crisis deepened after Kenji Fujimori and other 9 congressmen didn't respect the agreement reached with their parliamentary group and voted against President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, all to free Alberto Fujimori.
La agenda de Alberto Fujimori es mantenerse afuera.
Alberto Fujimori's agenda focuses on remaining out of jail and to keep his promises with Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Keiko Fujimori, his daughter, has a different objective. She wants to avoid being arrested and wants an option to hold the top position.
Librar la cárcel y tentar ser una opción de gobierno.
But the group that is following Kenji Fujimori has become even bigger, with 25 congressmen supporting him. Analyst Alberto Andreasen said that Keiko Fujimori is losing power in Congress, as well as her political influence with his father out of jail.
The future of the Fujimorismo movement as we know it is uncertain. Maybe we are even looking at the end of Fujimorismo because of the internal crisis the movement is facing.
This political crisis has also influenced the people.
I think that Keiko has other interests besides politics, and that her brother Kenji has only family interests.
I think this is a media strategy to distract the country from other things.
Meanwhile, Alberto Fujimori is enjoying his freedom and is sending messages on social media, giving his opinion about what is happening in Peru. Despite after being pardoned, he said that he would take a step back from politics.
New political organizations in Ecuador have announced their support for President Lenin Moreno's referendum on February 4th. The former president and leader of the País Alliance, Rafael Correa, is campaigning for people to vote against 3 of the 7 questions in the referendum. Correa said the questions were never approved by the Constitutional Court and that the process was illegal. The Ecuadorian office has announced the creation of a special committee to investigate the public debt administration under the government of former President Rafael Correa. The audit office said that the committee would be made up of 11 businessmen and judicial authorities who will analyze legal terms and the usage of the internal and external public debt between 2012 and May 2017. And former President Rafael Correa has said that the public debt has already been audited, and he said the committee would be formed by opposition members who are against his citizen revolution.
I want to tell all of you that the debt has been already audited until 2014. But now they want to audit it again. This is a persecution. That is the truth. Pablo Celi is an illegitimate audit officer. They control him from Carondelet Palace and from the National Assembly. And he does what he has to do in order to keep his job. Now he has become the main persecution instrument, and all the country should be aware and react to this. The audit committee is formed of opposition members who don't care about our country. They have been undertakers of our nation, but now they present themselves as the resurrectors. Enough of this. They are enemies of the citizen revolution.
Opposition supporters and unions in Bolivia are trying to increase the pressure against the government to annul the newly approved criminal code, while the government denounces a political conspiracy. More details in the next report.
The Bolivian lower house agreed to override 2 amendments to the new criminal code, a measure requested by striking doctors and public transport unions. However, the unions demand the annulment of the entire criminal code and refuse to negotiate.
The National Assembly doors are open to any social sector who wants to talk to us.
Article number 137, which is the main concern of the transport unions, has been annulled today. There is no reason, from my perspective, to continue taking the Bolivian population as hostage.
Last week, the government accepted the doctors' demands during an ongoing 45-day strike. The political opposition and other unions joined this movement. Even a senator declared himself on hunger strike.
The people who are in the streets have given us the duty of defending them.
The head of the state announced that his administration will adopt measures under the law to respond to the political attacks.
After 8 signed documents and agreements, they are still not attending to the health of our people. Other interests guide medical unions along with opposition sectors to try to carry forward an anti-democratic political conspiracy. I have decided for the health and life of our people to take all constitutional and legal actions to restore medical attention and health services for our people.
According to an official report, the opposition and certain unions created a movement to press the government for the annulment of the new criminal code and try to stop the country by blocking the roads.
The Chilean President, Michelle Bachelet, has met with Cuban President Raul Castro on the last day of her visit to Havana. Bachelet, who will leave office in 2 months, asked Cuba to maintain close relations with Chile, and she called on her successor, the right-wing businessman Sebastián Piñera, to keep up Chilean investments in Cuba and the Caribbean. And in Chile itself, our correspondent, Paola Dragnic, has this report on the human rights defender, Machi Francisca Lincolnau.
It was a newsworthy day here in Chile, especially in the south, in the Arauca region, because today Machi Francisca Lincolnau returned to Chile from her trip to Bolivia that began on January the 4th. A controversial trip because Lincolnau was indicted in the Lushinga-Macay case but later acquitted. However, surprisingly, the court dismissed this acquittal and the trial was set to restart on January the 8th. Today she is free, but the other indicted have arrest warrants, and we have learned that there is a big police attempt to arrest these 11 community members who were accused in the Lushinga-Macay case, also in the Arauca region. There was a recovery of former Micoy land. This is where Pope Francis will celebrate a mass on January the 17th. This is land that has been claimed by the Mapuches, so this land recovery where Pope Francis is going to be will generate more news in the coming days. We will keep you informed on what is going on in the Mapuche territory.
We thank Paola for that report. Wildfires are raging in Argentina's western central Mendoza province, and firefighters are struggling to control the blazes which began a week ago. Dry weather conditions and soaring temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius have exacerbated the issue, with strong winds also helping to spread the flames. The Nicaraguan government's main objective for 2018 will be to continue promoting social projects as part of the National Human Development Program. More details in the next report.
For Genoveva, today is her first working day of 2018. She's a teacher at a public children's center, recently built by the government of Nicaragua as a part of a social project promoted during the past year for the benefit of the population.
It is a great opportunity that our government is giving us Nicaraguans, a job opportunity to improve our economic situation and a social project that benefits many children and many families that do not have the money to pay for a private school. They provide qualified staff to take care of our children. They are also humanists because they give us the opportunity to have a home.
The project includes houses for the people, parks, constructions of new municipal markets, sports stadiums, roads, as well as new health and education facilities. The majority of the population approves the government administration.
They help us a lot because many parents have to work really hard, and this is a way of taking care of our children, and they receive a good education as well. I believe it is important to create more centers like this, one that will help us all.
The approved budget for 2018 includes an increase in social spending and public investment in transport infrastructure, water and sanitation projects, as well as social programs, among others.
We have projects all over the country. All of our people are directly benefiting because in each neighborhood, each community, we build streets, roads, schools, hospitals, maternity homes, and markets. These projects are all for our population. We could say infrastructure work that mayors have developed have benefited many Nicaraguans.
Benefits that the Sandinista government has exercised since the start of its mandate.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. The Trump administration is canceling permits allowing some 200,000 people from El Salvador to live and work in the United States. They must leave the country by 2019 or face deportation. The Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, was granted to Salvadorians after a series of earthquakes rocked El Salvador in 2001, leaving hundreds of thousands in the country homeless. It is the fourth country named by the Trump administration in 4 months to lose protection under the TPS program, which since 1990 has provided deportation relief to many immigrants.
This Congress, there are bipartisan bills that have been introduced, supported by Republicans and Democrats, to fix this, to provide a permanent legislative solution. This Congress, though, has proven that they're not great at getting anything done, so it definitely tempers my optimism.
My son and I, because my child said to me, "Mom, don't go. I don't want to stay here alone." But taking him to my country, El Salvador, is very dangerous. Leaving him here alone is too. Who is going to take care of him? Make sure he studies, bring him back to our home. We are paying for our home. I don't have anyone to leave him with.
In the fall of 2016, Washington officials had raised the possibility that sonic weapons were used to harm U.S. diplomats in Cuba. But U.S. Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona says there's no evidence of sonic attacks in Cuba.
They said that the FBI had informed them that there was no evidence of a directed attack. It's not to say that people didn't experience some kind of event, and that these symptoms, we're not saying that they're made up. It's just saying that there's no evidence of a directed attack by the Cuban authorities or anybody else, and that's important because we've drawn down our embassy.
And in Washington, the Foreign Relations Committee, headed by Marco Rubio, is discussing these allegations of sonic attacks on U.S. diplomats in Cuba. Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, has more details on it.
3 State Department officials are going to testify, but we have the version of Senator Jeff Flake, who says that the FBI report of the alleged sonic attacks that are supposed to be taking place sometimes during 2016, and according to the State Department, affected 24 officials of the Embassy of the United States in Havana, provoking like hearing loss, dizziness, and other type of medical consequences, has no proof according to what Jeff Flake is citing. So according to Jeff Flake, the FBI report shows no evidence. The other side of the story is being represented by Rex Tillerson. We're talking about what he said, quote, and I'm quoting what he mentioned to the agency, talking AP. He said the United States would be putting people intentionally in harm's way if it sent diplomats back to Cuba. That's the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, and he says FBI reports cast doubts on the initial theory that Americans, they have been hit by sonic attacks. So one of the versions is such FBI report saying that there's no evidence of that such attacks took place, and therefore what is being said about the consequences on the diplomatic staff, on the other hand, says to relations, to put back the relations, to put back the same level of staff in each of the embassies here in Washington, the Cuba, or the U.S. in Havana, will be dangerous or harmful for the personnel, the staff of the U.S. Embassy. That's what is supposed to be taking place throughout the day today here in Washington.
French President Emmanuel Macron continues his 3-day tour in China, aimed at strengthening commercial ties between the two countries. Our correspondent in Beijing, Sierra Diaz, has more.
Sí, gracias, colega. Saludos para ti, saludos también para todas las personas que se informan con nosotros a esta hora a través de...
Today, French President Emmanuel Macron visited the Forbidden City, one of the most important places in the capital of China, along with his wife Brigitte. Earlier, he attended an official event at the People's Palace, where he met with China's President of the Assembly and its Prime Minister. President Macron also signed several bilateral trade agreements with China's President Xi Jinping. Macron highlighted the importance of the relationship between both countries and also mentioned that the nations would collaborate in the development of artificial intelligence. This during a summit focused on this topic. Macron is also supporting China's Belt and Road project, an initiative that aims to connect Asia, Africa, and Europe through commercial ties. Macron is finishing his 3-day tour tomorrow, but before leaving he will participate in a climate change summit, one of the most important topics of his agenda. He has promoted the importance of the Paris Agreement, the use of renewable energies, and the support of China in this fight. During this visit, France has looked for a new agreement to strengthen its commercial ties with China, to counterbalance the uncertain commercial relations the European nation has with the United States and the UK.
Now let's have a look at some of the other stories from around the world.
South Korea and North Korea have held their first official talks in more than 2 years at Panmunjom in the demilitarized zone at the border. Both sides made announcements after the talks. Seoul has proposed inter-Korean military talks and reunion of family members in February. North Korea has agreed to send a delegation of high-ranking officials, athletes and a cheering squad to the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics next month.
We propose to hold a Red Cross meeting to discuss family reunions in time for Lunar New Year, which is a national holiday. Along with this, we also offer to hold inter-Korean military talks to prevent accidental clashes.
Iranian oil tanker burns for third day after collision off China coast. Poor conditions with heavy winds, rain and high waves continue to hamper efforts to tame the fire and search for the 31 remaining crew members on the tanker. Concerns are growing that the tanker may explode and sink. Special counsel Robert Mueller has told President Trump's legal team that his office is likely to seek an interview with the president as part of a Justice Department probe. Mueller is investigating possible collusion between Trump's 2016 campaign and Russia in the US elections. British Prime Minister Theresa May's leadership team shake-up, designed to restore her authority and address divisions over Brexit, was branded as shambles after her minister from Northern Ireland, James Brokenshire, quit and media reported another minister had refused to move jobs. Large part of Australia is suffering from heat wave. The temperature in Sydney hit almost 80-year high of 47.3 degrees Celsius on Sunday. The authorities in Sydney have advised people to staying well hydrated and out of the sun. They issued a reminder that it was an offence to leave children or pets unattended. Hundreds of bats have died due to the heat wave, according to the local authorities.
Tourists are going water lily wild for the giant aquatic plants, which only appear every 4 years in the bay of a Paraguayan river. People hire boats and canoes to paddle among the giant floating leaves, which grow up to 1.5 meters across and bloom in massive numbers in the first days of January. And with that, we've come to the end of this morning's news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.